Who's Robin? That's a good question. Actually, I started thinking about that on the way here on my bike. Robin nowadays is 41 years old, gray on the sides, a father, a partner, a brother, and a son. In private life and professionally, I'm a cultural explorer, photographer, city enthusiast. Yeah, and I love to come up with cool ideas. Yeah, so Munich was not my decision. Everything else was. So I was 3 years old when, yeah, my parents decided to move, got a job there, and I was 3 years old, so I moved to Munich and had an amazing childhood living in Munich, surrounded by mountains and nature, part of a international school, so a lot of international friends. And after I finished, that was 15 years, I decided to come back to the Netherlands because somewhere I thought, hey, I'm Dutch, but I've never lived in the Netherlands. So I decided to move to Amsterdam and started my study. And then fast forward, started a career, worked in advertising, started to be self-employed. And at the beginning of COVID, we were like, we had plans to go abroad. Then COVID hit. We were like, let's stay put, not knowing what's going to happen. And then throughout, we decided to, yeah, leave Amsterdam after 15 years and go to a city which has more like escape possibilities, like a beach or forests and so on. And yeah, we just realized nothing has to be a life decision. Just go for it. If we don't like it, we can always go back. We moved here, the two of us. A couple of months later, I had a car. A few months later, I had a dog. A year later, I had a kid. So I think it was a life-changing move. Student life, I mean, honestly, like, I think for me it was great. And so, for me, it was a new city. So, of course, it was amazing. But for me, it was also a time where I had to make new friends, had to get to know people because I didn't know anyone. So I also have perceived it as a very lonely time because coming from a background which was very safe and you had your friends and you didn't have to think about making friends. Yeah, you were thrown into the deep. My family still lived in Munich because my brother had to study. So I was very down to myself. Yeah. So I think that was although people think student time is about getting drunk and all that stuff, for me, I think I very quickly grew up in that time period. Also different because when I moved to Amsterdam, you really had the urge to make friends. When I moved to The Hague, there were some people I met, but you're so matured more that you are very much at ease with yourself or with your partner, so you can also stay in your bubble. But it also at the same time gives a lot of adrenaline or energy to go out there and meet new people, especially when you have a background in the creative industry or you're a photographer. Then you have at least something to share with people. Well, I started working in advertising, and what I loved most about advertising was storytelling in the first place. You know, building brands through emotion or through touching people and making them move and do things. During my time advertising, I realized it was more about selling more cans of Coke or different things, and I realized, okay, that was not why I chose to be in advertising. So I wanted to progress and also, take myself not just in one box when it comes to storytelling. We can film, we can take photos, we can create, we can come up with ideas, and we're very much in a world where where people are put in boxes. So you do this, so you're not allowed to think about ideas. And yeah, just being a bit more hybrid gave me the opportunity to allow myself to be more creative and to come up with stories and create narratives for others. So I think it's very much learning by doing, where you started to create stories and to share them with the world. And not just me, but also give others the opportunity to share their story. and me only being the facilitator of handing people a platform or asking the right questions. Yeah, so Good Place is a interview podcast channel, right? And I always been, that's the city enthusiast part. I've always been running a city platform, which is called A City Made by People. And we used to have a magazine published and hosting events, which was all about showing more the human side of a city. Hence your series. Um, because it's more than only consuming the hotspots of a city. Because there are people actually making it, creating it, putting sweat and tears into it. And Good Place came as an logical follow-up of that because I moved to a city. I grew up abroad. I found out my neighbors were from South Africa, and I was like, why do people move here? Or what were their reasons to move to a city? And I have my reasons, and there's no wrong or right, but I thought this can also help me to understand what a good place is for me. Um, Asking others about their good place. So that was a shower moment where I came up with the name, and I was like, let's go for it. And I started with my neighbor, which is also a good friend nowadays, Tyron from South Africa, from Johannesburg, and we recorded the first episode. And from then onwards, we took it away, and yeah, I'm heading towards 30 episodes where I ask people about what good place is for them in a physical sense, but also in life in general. Some perceive it as an expat channel, but it's not about just international people. But it's nice to have different backgrounds and different people with different history talking about this topic. It's a numerous stories, but the topics that people address that we take for granted are the ones that I remember most. So, for example, that first one with Tyron where we talked about safety, about the fact you cannot walk your dog at night, which is here a no-brainer. I walk my dog every evening, and it would be weird if I would think about that fact. Another conversation with Garo from Amsterdam, a chef, where he's in a great creative position doing amazing projects, but his family living in Lebanon is facing completely the opposite in life, which is about survival and making sure every day they have food on the table. And I can imagine that when your family lives somewhere else, trying to survive, and you're here, you're completely helpless and cannot do anything. So being selfish, you can say I'm in a good place, but at the same time your family isn't, which has a huge impact on you and your life. Sure, I think it would be Southern Europe because of the climate, and being nice. But at the same time, it's just not about physicality, and that's what I've learned throughout. Um, There are people that making it a sport to live in many cities and countries in the world is possible, but for some, that place is where their family is, and they will not travel with you all the way through. Yeah, or you make them if you have all the means to it. Everybody hop into the bus. We're moving. Yeah, that's like I don't know. That's what you see. What the Romas and so on do, right? Yeah. They move their entire family. It's just almost like gypsy life. Yeah. Create a park. We all move at the same location, and then we move on. And we stay put together. Yeah, could be a way of life. Well, handling it would be difficult. Right, that's on my bucket list. And I think also wanted to add about this expat connotation is that it's a bit like a hidden mission for me, but especially like connecting with locals. As soon as somebody knows you're an expat, it creates like some sort of distance. And I would love to get rid of the word expat and say, hey, you're where you're from, you're just as local. Maybe you're not born here, but nowadays you're just as local, maybe even more local, looking at how committed you are to a city or building your community with this channel, to others, that we should be treated equally in some ways, and not like, oh, this guy will leave in a couple years, so let's not make friends. It's like, doesn't make any sense. I think that's very probably a very common answer, but of course that's the beach. No, I mean, I have to be honest. It's mostly when the weather is good. Yeah, I won't be standing on the beach in the rain and thinking, wow, I'm completely at peace. No, but yeah, I mean, it's just for me. It's also not just a place where I sit or stand. I can go for a run through the dunes, and still have that feeling of peace and groundedness, And yeah, I mean, the scenery is beautiful around here. So that's what I'm searching for. Especially when you compare it to Amsterdam, um, the places of escape were in city parks, park benches. I yeah, in the past used a lot of city benches to sit, listen to music, write, and that was the moment where yeah, I could be a bit more present and more conscious. Yeah, yeah. Well, difficult. I would say difficult, but it was a way more less dynamic. As in, at night the streets quiet. That's something we were not used to. But where I live in the Statenkwartier, after 7 or 8, it's quiet. So from a sound point of view, yeah, you notice. Even if you cycle through the streets in the evenings, the city is quiet, which is also nice. You start to notice. Um, but what I did notice is that people do say more hi on the streets around here than in Amsterdam. So I made a lot more connection with people here than even with neighbors than I have in Amsterdam. Well, it's also a language thing. If people don't speak Dutch, it's harder for them to get a job. You know, um, it's connecting with Dutch also can be, but I think that's accountable for every country where you move to. That when you don't speak the language, you're not really connecting with the culture or with a person. Um, but difficulties? No, most people do have a plan when they come here to land. Yeah. And but I think housing is a problem, job is a problem, getting a house is a problem, especially when it comes to rent. Yeah, I mean, I just had an interview with someone. If you have a pet, it's almost impossible to get a dog or get a house. I mean, so with a dog, it's difficult because everybody says a place for rent, no pets allowed. Yeah. This is funny because every time you think about missing Amsterdam, which I do, it's about memories. It's about things that have happened in the past or a life that you've had for a couple of years. Um, a certain lifestyle you've had, and sometimes you cherish to that time where I don't know, you were just out and about with friends, partying on a boat on the canals. Could be one of them. That those are moments. So every time you cross the Prinsengracht in Amsterdam, you're like, oh, remember that moment on that boat? That was really cool. And those kind of moments are things that you remember that you miss. But the reality is the city is not the same city as 10 years ago. So it will definitely be a different experience when you start living here. Lots of people have moved out. People getting families, they all move out. They want to, live bigger. Mostly all doing the same thing, and you can long back to that time where you had that life, but things have different, and you just need to accept it. So I also think that every place or also fits to a certain chapter in life, which I'm also part of. Yeah, and I think there's the same accountable for like photography and so on that I do. It's all about people, and I think it's a very much about um, connecting with people. Like even it's even if it's connecting with strangers on the street, same as inviting people on the bench who mostly I don't know, and sometimes you go in blank. That means that you have to be open-minded. You cannot. I don't want to be stuck in my own reality all the time, and that's also what drives me. Is that through the work of a camera or through video and photography, you get into worlds you would probably never be or come. And I think that that's the most beautiful part, is that it creates some sort of vulnerability. People love to say out of my comfort zone. Well, it's a thing. Um, yeah, and I think that pushes me, but I think also pushes others, and that's where we connect. I'm not. I've not created this channel to make new friends. Um, but if you make a new friend, then that's a super bonus. But I think it's more to get a more grounded perspective on society, and don't judge people just for no reason. Yeah, hopefully makes me stay a bit more open-minded towards the world. And I think that's also, to add to that, why I love photography so much, is that I love to observe positive moments, like things that some sort of creative smile. And it's very refreshing because also like almost helping my mental health. That when I look at media or social media, I can also be drawn into this negative spiral of things that are happening. But when I go out there and force myself to go out, to connect, to meet new people, but also to capture and observe what's around me, I'm remaining hopeful about society and what's happening in the world. And that we should be more um, appreciative and more grateful of what's happening and what's happening around you than, yeah, of all the negative stuff that's happening. You go out more a lot. You breathe more fresh air. um, you freeze your ass off in the wintertime. No, but yeah, I think I think inspiration, for example. I think it's you can find inspiration in different ways, but you can also find a lot of inspiration to talking to people. I think that unconsciously helped. So it fuels me as well at one point. Um, and I honestly, I think it also gives a lot of energy, um, because I think that energy feeds me to keep on going with the channel, or keep on feeding me to go out there and take my camera and try to capture things. Because every moment is different or unique, so it doesn't become something boring. And when I get comments that people can relate to someone's story, or like, hey, this also happened to me, or thanks because it's very valuable because I'm looking for a good place. So for example, I did a poll. Um, have you found your good place, or are you still searching? And the majority says I'm still searching. That means that we have a job to do. And I think that's what I try to do in my work, is that I, w- I want to use my creativity to create value for others, not just for me as an outlet, but if it's received by others as value, and even if it's just one person that you can help further, then my job's done. I'm like Robin Hood, but then without handing out money, I'm just making sure people can take a step further in life.
Trying to stay true to the name. I'm like, okay.
That's how I normally start projects,
Okay.
actually, um, where I don't start to create it 100%, but I love to create it halfway and see how it pans out. Like, sure, you can do research and do market research and think, do people like it, looking for it, all that stuff. But sometimes you just need to start and then adjust and steer along the way. So I didn't. I said, okay, I'm gonna do at least 10 or 20 episodes, and then see what's gonna happen. The only thing is that it's only my time and somebody else's time. Not too much editing, not too much crazy stuff. not too much investing money, nothing. Bit more lean and mean, and then we'll see where it goes. The city platform.
Yes.
Yeah, so it started off as a meet a local platform
Okay.
for people actually visiting cities.
Amsterdam, right?
Yeah, and you could book a local.
Okay.
So this was like 2012. Um, but as soon I realized I didn't want to host like a travel platform, and I felt okay, this should be more for citizens actually celebrating their city. So it turned out to be a blog with content, and at the highlight we had 100 correspondents worldwide that actually wanted to write about their city. And they wrote beautiful articles about creative industry, about local heroes, tons of cool categories. Turned out to be a print magazine, and we hosted events a bit more like Pecha Kucha style, where makers in the city would present their work. Yeah, and we started to build really like a community.
And
Uh,
how long has it been going on?
so on that highlight, I think 2016 to 2021, beginning of COVID, that lasted. Unfortunately, throughout COVID, it really died out a bit. Um, Rightfully so, because people were just minding their own business. It was all about survival.
Yeah.
But also through managing this platform, I started to lose why I was doing this in the first place.
Okay.
So I took a break from it, and yeah, why I was doing it is this whole love for stories, and that hopefully I brought it back with good place, in some ways. It's always been some sort of purpose to make cities more human, but I also realized you can use different projects to get to that same goal. And Good Place is one of those projects, but my photography as well. And you can run a business, but sometimes it's also nice to know that like if you're a plumber, you know what you're good at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're like you can people also know what they can hire you for.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's still hard that if you do multiple things, your own projects and you're a photographer, that what does Robin do? I do a lot of different things, but then still people are like, what can I hire you for? Yeah, different things. So it can be also very confusing, and I need to get better at that. To make more distinctions. Yeah, it's a good question. I never want to make a distinction between the hobby when it comes to these things, because I want to make my hobby my work, so it doesn't feel like work.
That'd be like a very cliched OT thing. Like, yeah, let's do your hobby as your work.
Yeah, I mean, I think, especially with these things, if I tell myself it's a hobby, I probably don't go full in. Whereas I want to make it a success, or like it's not about perfection or anything, but I it's part of my drive to make a positive impact on people, and positively improve, like impact my surrounding. And then it doesn't matter if it's a profession or a hobby. It's probably what you tell yourself, but for others it doesn't matter. Um, so I might always be doing this. And if I'm not figuring out the business model over time, then I need to do something else, because I have to feed a family. But I'm convinced that I'll manage and turn this into, a profitable endeavor. Yeah. But I think it's also about ambition, because one of my hobbies is to watch Formula One. But I don't have an ambition to become a Formula One driver. Uh,
As every Dutchman.
Guilty. As a hobby, I run, but I don't have an ambition to become a professional runner. No, that's the first time ever in where I have lived in a city where I've known my neighbors, so many neighbors in my street, is from my time here in The Hague. It's such a almost community where people started watching your dog, for example, or say hi in the street, stand and have a chat. And that's been something that I've never experienced before. And also this from a recent poll I did. Do you know your neighbor? So many people don't know their neighbors. It's unbelievable. And I cannot understand why you cannot know your neighbor. Well, or like you live in a flat and it has like 500 people. I get that, but your direct neighbor, make an effort to connect and say hi, and see what he or she is up to or what he or she is doing. And who knows, they can be very helpful to you in life. Just a little anecdote. We got our kiddo, and a neighbor across offered to cook us something, cook food, in the first week after leaving hospital. I was stunned. I was like, wow. And then she came with an oven dish. Like, here you go. Never ever experienced something like this. But super grateful that people are so helpful and willing, and they actually do pay attention. They notice you, and that's something beautiful. Hey, my name is Robin, and I'm part of the circle.